Welcome, welcome. We are live and it is February.
Gosh, not only is it February, but it's February of 2024. How did this happen? When did this come online?
I know I say that a lot, but it really is just flying by. Like it's
Yeah.
just insanity. I don't know.
Mhm.
My name is Tricia Broderick.
I'm Diana Larsen.
And we co-wrote Lead Without Blame, and we're coming together once a month. We've been doing pretty consistently,
Yeah.
so we're on this
Yeah.
once a month to do a live. We pick
Mhm.
various topics, sometimes topics directly from the book, sometimes topics correlated to the book or expanded or extending what we were kind of
Mhm.
talking about from the book. We will acknowledge selfishly, it's just so we can get together a little bit too, because we miss each other. But
Yeah.
also we love engaging, and so as you come on and you have comments, feel free to pop them in and we'll try and incorporate and pivot a little, because we have a topic, but we're very
Right.
unscripted. Like, we don't actually prep for this. We
Right.
just see what comes about with that. So today's topic is the importance of connection. It's February. We're
Yeah.
heading into a new year, and
Right.
connection in the workplace, particularly, obviously.
Mhm.
But when I say that topic, what comes up for you? Like, what do you think that, like, how would you define that connection?
A connection is essential to collaboration. We're not going to be able to work well together if we don't have some level of connection. The other thing that really popped up for me was and it hadn't before, but just now when you said it, I thought about Edgar Schein's books, The Humble Bundle, and I'm trying to remember which one of them it is. It might be Humble Consulting. He talks about relationships at work and levels of relationships, and there's like a level 1, 2, 3, and it is basically an increasing sense of connection between the parties in the working relationship, whether it's a consultant and a client, or whether and that it doesn't necessarily make sense to shy away from sharing the personal during work relationships, that it actually strengthens those relationships. And so that makes me think about, it's not personal, it's just business, right? that quote that
I
we
just
use in
highlighted that to my class this week. I was like, stop it.
yeah, right. Yes. And we use that in the book, and that is a disconnector. It is business. If we are trying to work together, even if we're trying to negotiate two different parts of a thing, it's still, we need to feel a connection in order to come out of that successfully. I think, just as an aside, I think that's probably what's wrong with a lot of our politics right now, is there are people who don't know how to forge those connections and then be honorable about it and respectful about it. So that's what's coming up for me this morning. Yeah.
I like the tie with it. I actually like using the word connection over relationship a lot of times.
Yes.
Relationship is so loaded, right? And
Yeah.
it's so complicated and complex in itself. And
Right.
relationships, the journey, like, I think of the relationship as the longer essence, or the longer word to describe an interaction over a period of time. But a connection, I could almost have very little interaction with you, very little connection, or very little relationship, right? I could barely know you, and I could still get a connection, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like the word connection in the sense of bringing people together in terms of that collaboration, in terms of that co-intelligence, in terms of those things. And where that goes, whether it truly turns into a trustful, respectful, honorable, right, relationship, might be different. Like, there are even times that I think I've gotten connection from people that I don't trust or don't have. And yet that connection can still be powerful in that moment. Because, like, for me, one of the biggest benefits of connection is I feel a little less alone.
Yes.
So, like, that connection might be, you describe something and I'm like, you feel that too? Like, that's not just me, right? Like, and it doesn't matter, again, how much I know about that person or anything. It's just that
Right.
moment of feeling like you're not insane,
Yeah.
you're not crazy, you're not alone. And
Right.
that for me is such a powerful, maybe sadistic,
Yeah.
I don't know, like selfish kind of
Right.
thing. But it helps me to somehow, like, knowing somebody else is going through it too, it's like, okay, we've got this, like, and that's where my brain goes from it. And so it's a very calming thing for me, is just
Right.
knowing that I'm not alone.
Right. Well, and I mean, I really like that. It's like it can be just for a moment or for a very short time. And it made me think about some of the experiences. I've been traveling a lot lately, right? And so going through airports and, trying to figure things out. And I had a flight cancellation and, all this stuff. And the need to be able to, it's just what you said really made me very aware of how much my ability, or, a shared ability to make a connection with someone made a difference in how fraught or scary or whatever some of those situations were. I happened to be traveling during a time when my knees were giving me some problems, and I had a cane, and so I had wheelchair assistance through a lot of the airports, and it was really interesting to me, the wheelchair pushers, those service people, those wonderful aides that the airlines and the airports provide. What a different experience it was when I was able to make a connection with that person versus when I wasn't. When they were just on the job, they just saw me as another slab of meat in their wheelchair that they needed to transport from one place to another, versus when we exchanged names, when we, talked about, should I go to the lounge or should I go directly to the gate? Or, we had conversations and we did joint problem solving and things like that. And the difference in my stress levels when I was able to have that connection. And there are lots and lots of other examples, connecting with the other passengers whose flights were also canceled, and we're all waiting to figure out what the airlines are going to do, or what, all those little connections. And that added so much to my trip. There was one guy I connected with who didn't really have a lot of English, but he spoke French. And as you know, he was from Paris, right? He was French. And he, as you know, I've been studying French. And so it gave me a chance to sort of connect with him by saying, well, you don't know very much English and I don't know very much French, but maybe together we can make this work, right? And that I'll never see that person again. That was a relationship that lasted for a day, 24 hours, maybe, from the time we knew the cancellation was happening till we were both on our planes again. But it completely changed the quality of what that trip would have been like by being able to make those fast connections. So that, yes, I really agree. Being able to do that in the moment, with something, particularly with people together, you're trying to get something done, whether for each other or just collaboratively trying to move a thing forward. It makes such a difference.
Well, that's my second favorite thing about connection.
Yeah.
So like it's the less alone. And then the second thing is that co-intelligence, is that problem
Right.
solving, is that collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Is that you don't feel the weight of it all on your own, which adds the stress, which adds the things, but you're
Right.
like, okay, what can we do here? What can we do here? And it can come in all forms, but that new perspectives, those different ideas, the different skill sets that are brought when you're working with that and you're being comfortable, right? To open it, right? Because I think that's the interesting part. Like, people are like, well, why create a new word? Just say collaboration. Because I've watched people collaborate and not connect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They can technically build off of things, but they like connective collaboration is like I think about when we were writing, it's like you'll say something, I'm like, oh, and then we could do this. And you're like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like and like we feel like it's so
Yeah.
cool. You feel in sync, and yet you're bringing different perspectives. You're so that trust is there to where you can go, oh wait,
Yeah.
no, I don't actually, that doesn't work for me yet, right? And I feel so comfortable to say that we can then really work that. So it's this
Yeah.
like you feel so in sync with the person and trusting to where you can push yourself out of your comfort zone, help push them out of their comfort zone,
Yeah.
which then gets you better results, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like that's my
Well,
I
yeah. And, you know, we identified a resilience factor that we call collaborative connection, right? That is about the trust building and that kind of thing. But I feel like you're saying collaboration enriched by connection. You know, it's like if the connection is there, the collaboration goes so much better.
yes. And
Right.
vice versa, right? Like
Yeah.
with those parts. Yeah.
And like Jim says in the comments, it's the best feeling in the world. It really
I wish
is.
I could
Yeah.
say I was any kind of musical, but I am not. Like
Yeah.
I once played a flute for one thing in 5th grade, but it's
Yeah.
there. But like that's part
Right.
of it, is like I think that's why I do love watching true musicians
Yeah.
like feeding off of each other. Peter Green also talks a lot about that, and he's
Yeah.
done jazz sessions at conferences
Yes.
demonstrating that
Right.
that collaboration, but that trust and connection with each other to
Yeah.
feed off of it. And it's just
Right.
gosh, it's a talent I wish I had, man.
Well, and you know, it was funny. Jim says rapport there, but I met someone on this trip that we had a couple of Zoom calls and we were thinking about doing something together. And since we were both going to be in London at the same time, we actually got together. And we spent, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours together, just talking about the thing that we're interested in and talking about all kinds of other things. And I thought about Anne of Green Gables and kindred spirits, right? And that's how I was describing to my assistant that I work with all the time. It's like when I met Neil, it was like we were kindred spirits. Like, you know, that sense of connection with someone whom you like I've had this connection for a long time, but I've never met this person before. That kind of sense of that. It was just, you know, it was just amazing. And I'm really looking forward to, you know, what will come out of whatever it is we do together. But we're going to get together just because we like each other now. And
yeah, like I think that leads, I mean, beautiful.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we did script this because that does lead to like my other thought of is like the connection can be a network connection and a community connection, right? Like, and in some ways it doesn't even always have to be one-on-one. Like, I mean, we just popped, Jim made some comments on here, but like, I like had, you know, I had seen Jim from afar way before I got to meet him. Right. Or you and other people. And it's like, I got to like, oh, you said something up on stage and I'm like, oh, I feel seen, right? Like, and you like you have this connection, and I've experienced it myself where somebody will come up and they're like, they know me way more than I actually am. Like, your name is right because when we're sharing, especially as speakers or as authors, we kind of have that dynamic that can happen. But like the cool part is I actually watch even in the connections of when we do introductions, right? Like this is somebody that like when I introduce like a Linda Rising, I'm like, like here's Linda. And the cool part is some of those connections, like I get inspired watching a connection between other people. Like I love watching a dynamic and even if I'm not getting to do it, it's inspiring, right? It makes me smile. Like it just makes me happy. And so I love the network dynamic also of connection where sometimes I get a hit of energy, a hit of inspiration just by watching somebody else's connection a little bit. Like, and that's a pretty cool dynamic that you have a community.
Yeah.
that can build on that, where you have these shared rapport dynamics, you have some of these things, and that it makes it a little bit faster to build in those moments.
Well, and thinking about those times, I mean, with Jim on here, thank you so much, Jim, for showing up and being in the comments, because,
it's triggering all these thoughts.
Jim, we will always have Malma, we will always have that afternoon of having coffee, and that memory will stay with me forever. Right. And it not only, even though Jim and I don't live that, I mean, we're both in the Pacific Northwest, but we don't see each other that often. Even then, the memory of that connection, and then seeing things pop up in other places like here, also gives me confidence in making newer connections with other people. That really is possible to move through life, enlarging our networks, in enriching our connections, enriching our collaborations, because we've seen ourselves do it, right? And we've seen, like you say, we've seen others do it, and so we know it's a real possibility in the world. And I feel sad for people who, don't experience that or haven't experienced that. Because I just think it's so important. And, when this time of year, with Valentine's Day, and when so many people in the world are celebrating that kind of romantic connection, I love it that Galentine's has come on board, right? So it's like, it doesn't always have to be that same kind of a love connection. It can be just celebrating the connections that we have with people that are dear to us for all kinds of reasons. And that's just really important. And it's wonderful when that happens in our teams and with our coworkers.
You totally made me realize that that is one of my favorite things. It isn't even just the new connections or the potential for connections or seeing other connections. It's past connections that keep me going too, right? Yeah. Like even with people that are no longer with us, right? There are absolutely moments where, like a David Hussmer or Jean DeBaca, absolutely a moment. I'll flash back to a moment. I'll flash back to a moment where that connection was exactly what I needed in that moment, that they provided me to feel a little less alone or motivated or inspired. And I can hold that with me. Right. And so like, I obvious, but like you actually just made me, like, I didn't even think about that, but there's absolutely truth to that dynamic of the former connection staying with you and continuing to have impact in different ways.
Right.
We're being very positive. Yeah. Let's get a little real a little bit too. What's a danger or a pitfall or a caution you have when it comes to workplace connections?
Well, there are some, and one is I have come to realize, as I've been through my life and grown older, that when I connect with people, I am always opening myself to the possibility of betrayal. That what I think is important or rich or whatever about that connection, someone else may not feel the same. And they may take an action that it shocks me, saddens me. I can feel betrayed. I can feel it can chip away at my ability to connect to the next new person I meet. And that for me is the big one, I think, is we have to stay aware that there's always a trade-off. Everything has an upside and a downside, right? And so while there is so much we gain from connections, we also have to get as good as we possibly can at reading people, at listening to our colleagues when they say, do you really want to forge a connection with that person? I didn't have such good luck with that, we have to be wise in where we create connections and what the other person's motivation might be, and all of those things, because that kind of connection, just like a romantic connection, there's always the kind of the lurking potential of a breakup there with particularly at work, where people have a lot of different agendas going on. There is always that potential for some kind of betrayal or hurtful disconnection.
Yeah. That's definitely my top one too. So I'll stretch a little bit and come up with another one. And my other one is boundaries. So I am you get the same Tricia no matter who's in the room. That's both a good thing and probably a bad thing. But I'm a very vulnerable speaker. I'm a very vulnerable sharer. I'm a very vulnerable person, right? Like I've had a lot of things and I'm open to talking about them because it might help somebody, or I'm strong enough to be able to talk about them. But I found that that has created two scenarios and connections for me that has struggling. One where people take our connection and try and turn it into a much bigger relationship than it actually is. Or two, that then gives them license to say anything that might be like, wow, you're going to just say that right to my face, like no holds bar. Like you're just going to smack me from left to right and then back again and just completely insult me. And then what? Like, and I found that it made people unfiltered with their things, which goes back to your statements, right? And my vulnerability has made me kind of more vulnerable at times, because I also think I have something shown on my forehead that invisibly tells people, please say any hurtful thing directly to me. Feel free. Like, and so I have to really work on that. Like I find myself, I need to vent separately afterwards in the moment. I try to understand the good intent of what's happening in that moment, then still want to punch a pillow, right? Like in those things. So I find that I'm such a people person, but when I'm not your person, I can draw that line very, very hard, right? Like, and I can sever ties and I can put up boundaries, but I've had to learn how to recognize when I needed those boundaries a little sooner than I actually put up.
Yeah.
So we've, what time is that? We got a little bit more time. So one final question with it. Oh, and with this is, I clearly do not have this struggle. I clearly am an extreme extrovert who would talk to pretty much likes to do it. But if you're somebody that this is really, really hard for, what's a piece of advice that you would give them to get started? Because I'm always like, just talk.
Yeah. Well, and just talk is fine. But for me, it's about, what is the nature of the connection, right? And so, I mean, I have a lot of friends and family who I am connected closely with, who are extreme introverts, who, really feel a lot. I mean, they have their moments when they can come out of their shells, but their default is, and I, one of them is I won't say the relationship, but very close relationship. And, I learned that when I visited their house with my enthusiasms and my excitement about seeing them and so on and so forth, that they I mean, this may be a metaphor or an analogy that's lost on a lot of people, but they experienced me as anti-MAME, showing up, woohoo, and I didn't feel like I was being that extremely enthusiastic or overbearing, but that's how they experienced me. And we ended up having a conversation about that, about the fact that they were having this experience of me. And then my experience to their reaction was I felt like I was being pushed away. Right. And so we talked about how can we have continue. We both knew we wanted to care about each other. Right. And so how do we negotiate that? What is going to be the thing? And so, when I go to their house and I'm talking with another person who lives there, that we get excited together about things, I no longer misinterpret when they just fade out and leave the room. Right. I just know they need some different space at the time. And so I don't take that personally anymore, which I kind of did before. It was like every time I walked into the room, they left the room. And I was like, but wait. And but they don't do that anymore. Now, I know what's going on. We actually respect and care for each other a lot. I think this person is brilliant. And so we're now able to do that, but we did have to talk about it. We did have to say this relationship we know is going to be valuable to us, so we need to be able to work it out so that it works for both of us.
You made me think of maybe what my new advice will be a little bit is, because actually one of my favorite moments, even with work colleagues, is when you can just sit there in silence and it's totally comfortable. And it's just I have a dear friend that in the community that like we just get so excited to see it. We just sit and then we'll be like, let's just sit. I just want to sit with you. We don't have to talk. And we'll talk for days, but like in that moment, we just want to sit together. We just want to be together. And that is incredible with it.
Yeah.
So what do you have coming up?
What do I have coming up? Well, I have some family issues I need to take care of in the next several weeks. But then it's very exciting at the end of March. Well, there's some podcasts, but there's a bunch of those. But at the end of March, there are two things in the same week. We are doing a 2-day fast agile workshop in Portland, Oregon, that is going to be kind of everything you need to know about fast in order to consider whether you want to get started with it, and which will segue right into Agile Open Northwest, which I've gotten talked into facilitating the second day of that.
I mean, that's you,
and I just love that.
That is your place, man. That's your place. Okay.
And then as we go forward, I've got a retrospective facilitator gathering in May, and I'm planning to attend the XP conference in Bolzano in June. So, yeah.
In terms of conferences specifically, I am keynoting the South Africa Scrum Gathering at the end of this month in Cape Town, and I'm so excited. We're starting to like get planned. Like it feels so close now. I'm so excited. I will also be at Craft and Budapest in May. And in terms of public classes, we just did one. I have a Leading Amazing Teams course that I do with Jake Calabrese in April, as well as a facilitation, helping teams make decisions course in April. Those are my only two publics that are coming up in terms of classes with that. And then we're both we'll see what happens with more conferences and things as we're coming forward. Like right now, we're all in submission systems and things. But the other thing I really have to call out and highlight and make I put my board president Agile Denver hat on for a second. We have Agile Denver is bringing back their Mile High event. We're looking at a reboot and looking at that. That will be May 15th. Tickets are now on sale. If you're interested in sponsoring or anything along those lines, let me know. If I think things are coming out, tickets are already happening. So I'm so excited for this. It just feels good to be kind of getting back together. Speaking of the connection and doing all those things. So that will be happening May 15th. So definitely check it out. Let me know if you need anything for that. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have our next live date. That's on our to-do list after
oh my
this one.
gosh. Oh, okay. Yeah. All
So,
right.
so when we finish, we will decide our next live date. We're still meeting for a few more. We're working on
Yeah.
doing a number of things. So we will post that up and get that out there for everybody soon.
Yeah.
Till next time.
Bye.